Today we are going to talk about plagiarism. We will specifically focus on the most common types of plagiarism and how to avoid it. Plagiarism is an unethical act of writing. It is a writer passing off another writer's work as their own. It is pretty much an act of theft. Schools in America do not tolerate this kind of behavior. It can reflect on your academic record negatively, and you may fail your course. Some institutions will even resort to suspension, which will affect your chances of moving up the professional ladder. There are many types of plagiarism, and they have different levels of severity. It also matters if it is deemed to be intentional or unintentional. This is why it is important to educate ourselves in different kinds of plagiarism so we know what to avoid and how. So let's begin with types of plagiarism. The first type I want to talk about is direct plagiarism. This is also known as word-for-word plagiarism. This means using another writer's words verbatim without proper citation. Copying and pasting someone else's work into your documents without proper citation is considered direct plagiarism. It is a serious offense in most institutions. There is nothing wrong with using another writer's words as long as you give them the appropriate recognition. One simple way to avoid direct plagiarism while keeping another writer's text is to use quotation marks around the text and reference it to the original source. Another way is to include a direct quotation followed by proper paraphrasing and referencing. The second one we have is mosaic plagiarism. Mosaic plagiarism can also be called patch writing. It is a writing style in which a writer patches together content from different sources and interweaves it with their own ideas and insights to make it look like an original work. The end result is a composition of material from different sources passed off as original content. This is done without proper citation as well. Mosaic plagiarism is quite difficult to detect right off the bat because of the multiple sources used. Patchy working involves replacing words of the original text with the synonymous terms while keeping the sentence format and context. But some plagiarism checking applications these days are sophisticated enough to detect these similarities between sources. Mosaic plagiarism can be quite serious. Remember, you are not only stealing from one source, but from multiple sources. This means the offense is committed several times. The next one is self-plagiarism. This involves simply copying from your own previous work and including it word for word in another paper. This is the most common form of plagiarism. This means self-plagiarism is the most difficult one to avoid. Although you wrote a paper and submitted to a professor as a class project, you cannot use the same paper for another class. If you want to submit the same or similar papers in different classes, you might get away with it by getting written approval from both professors. While you might argue that what you wrote in high school has nothing to do with what you are currently writing in college, it is a very different story if we are talking about creating content with the intention of publishing it as an official research or an academic document. Even if you are putting in the word, you might need to properly cite your previous content to avoid self-plagiarism. The last one we will talk about is accidental plagiarism. Plagiarism is wrong whether it is done intentionally or unintentionally. However, accidental plagiarism might be unavoidable. Even though you might consider this to be an honest mistake, the consequences depend on the institution's policies. At the end of the day, the responsibility is yours. So make sure you take the right steps. Accidental plagiarism is more like a form of negligence or carelessness. For example, misquoting a direct quote, not paraphrasing properly, or citing a source incorrectly are considered accidental plagiarism. This is another common mistake students make. Incorrect citation is still considered to be plagiarism, even if the source is referenced, especially when the writer mistakes the context of the original author. The only way to avoid this is to have a good understanding of how to make proper citations in the text and in the reference section. Aside from knowing how to cite properly, running your paper through a plagiarism checking application or software is an effective way of avoiding plagiarism. In my next video, I will talk about top free and paid plagiarism checking software and other tips and tricks you can apply to create original and informative content. It is very important for students to develop a habit of writing and submitting papers with originality, or at least to know how to cite and reference others' work properly. Remember, the best way to avoid plagiarism is citation. If you are in doubt, cite. I hope you find this content helpful, and I hope you apply what you learned from this video to your next writing assignment. Thanks for joining me today, and see you in my next video.